Imagine walking into a hospital for what everyone assures you is routine surgery. You tell yourself it's nothing serious, just a small procedure, a minor inconvenience. Maybe a few hours under anesthesia, a quick recovery, and then back to your normal life. You never expect a single visit to rewrite the story of your entire world. But for Prince William, that is exactly what happened. What was supposed to be a straightforward procedure for Kate Middleton turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. And in the first moments after hearing the news, William's reaction was raw, visceral, heartbreaking. "I can't lose her," he whispered to an aide. "Don't leave me." Those words, private and desperate, have now shaken the foundations of the royal family and sent shockwaves around the globe. The world knows Kate Middleton as the poised, elegant Duchess of Cambridge, the queen of grace under pressure, the mother of 3 children who seems to handle everything with unshakable calm. But what happens when even the strongest among us are confronted with mortality, with a diagnosis that no one is prepared for? This isn't just a story about royalty. This is about fear, love, grief, and the unimaginable pressure of facing a life-threatening illness while the eyes of the world are on you. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The news broke slowly, almost cautiously. The palace, always meticulous about controlling information, delayed public disclosure, hoping perhaps that more details could be gathered, treatments could begin, or outcomes could improve. But secrecy in a world obsessed with the royal family is fleeting. Leaked hospital documents, subtle hints in insider accounts, whispers from those who work closest to the couple, all of these began to surface. Suddenly, what was meant to remain private became headline news. Social media erupted. Television networks interrupted regular programming. Millions around the world collectively gasped as the shocking reality sank in. Kate Middleton, beloved by millions, was facing a life-threatening diagnosis discovered during what was supposed to be minor surgery. The contrast between expectation and reality could not have been starker. Imagine telling yourself it's routine and then discovering it's terminal. Imagine holding your partner's hand, making light jokes about anesthesia or hospital gowns, and then hearing words that instantly drain all color from your world. For William, the impact was profound. A husband, a father, and the future king of a nation, he was suddenly thrust into a position no one could have prepared him for. His grief, his shock, and his helplessness are now being watched by a global audience that has long placed him on a pedestal, often forgetting that even royals are human, even they are vulnerable, even they can break. In the first hours after the diagnosis, the palace moved quietly behind closed doors. Advisors, aides, and family members gathered, trying to chart the best path forward. But in those private moments, William's pain was raw, unfiltered. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, voice trembling, eyes haunted. There are reports that he refused to leave Kate's side, that he barely slept, barely ate, and barely spoke except to offer comfort to the woman who had been his partner, confidant, and anchor for more than a decade. The role of a royal suddenly felt inadequate in the face of something so devastatingly real. The implications of this diagnosis reach far beyond the walls of the hospital. Kate Middleton is not just a duchess. She is a mother, a public figure, and a symbol of stability in a sometimes turbulent monarchy. Her health crisis touches the lives of millions who see her as more than a royal. They see her as someone who embodies grace, strength, and humanity. And yet, this story also forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How does one balance public duty with private crisis? How does a family, constantly under scrutiny, navigate grief when every move is documented, analyzed, and criticized? As the world began piecing together the timeline, the shocking details became clear. During a routine abdominal procedure, doctors discovered late-stage ovarian cancer. This was not a minor anomaly. This was an urgent, life-threatening condition that required immediate attention. The very surgery meant to correct a minor problem revealed the worst possible news. Imagine the horror, the disbelief that turned into terror. Kate, surrounded by medical professionals and the husband she loves, had to hear words that no one ever wants to hear. "Your condition is serious. You have cancer." The palace's response was cautious but deliberate. While public statements were delayed, inside, plans were already underway. Treatment strategies, private consultations, and discussions about how to break the news to children and the public were happening behind closed doors. Yet secrecy in today's digital age is fragile. Leaks happen, rumors spread, and as whispers of Kate's condition reached the press, the global reaction was immediate. Headlines screamed. Social media erupted. News anchors speculated, dissected, and debated. What was private grief became public spectacle. And amid all this, William's humanity shone brightest. The man who was expected to be stoic, regal, unshakable, he crumbled. Reports describe him pacing hospital corridors, clutching his head in disbelief, tears streaming down his face. Close aides say he would mutter under his breath, voice choked with fear. "I can't lose her. Not now. Not like this." These intimate glimpses of his despair have struck a chord worldwide. People do not just sympathize, they empathize. Here is a man, beloved by his country and admired around the world, facing one of the greatest fears any human can endure. Even as we watch from a distance, there is an immediacy to this story. How do you cope when your partner is in the fight of their life? How do you navigate fear, hope, and responsibility simultaneously? How do you maintain composure when every eye is watching, every whisper is amplified, and every action is scrutinized? For William, there are no easy answers. And for the world, the unfolding story is both mesmerizing and heart-wrenching. As the palace navigates the path ahead, questions linger. Will Kate respond to treatment? How is William managing, day to day, under this pressure? How are the children adjusting to this shocking reality? And most importantly, what steps will the royal family take to protect her privacy while also preparing for a potential public reckoning? The answers are unfolding, slowly, deliberately, like a high-stakes drama played out in real life. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. A routine checkup, a minor surgery. That was all anyone expected. Kate Middleton, Duchess of Cambridge, had scheduled a seemingly straightforward abdominal procedure, the kind that thousands of women undergo every year without incident. Doctors assured her it was low risk, that recovery would be swift, and that there was nothing to worry about. Yet, in the quiet corridors of the hospital, what was supposed to be routine was about to spiral into a nightmare no one could have anticipated. The morning of the surgery began like any other. Kate, composed and poised, arrived at the hospital accompanied by William. The couple exchanged smiles, a few light-hearted jokes, and the reassurance that everything would be fine. "It's just routine," Kate said, brushing away any tension in her voice. William nodded, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. He had always been the vigilant husband, attentive and protective, and even this routine procedure felt heavy with unspoken worry. The doctors, prepped and professional, guided Kate through preoperative protocols. Nurses offered comfort, but the sense of unease that hovered in the air was impossible to shake completely. Once in the operating room, everything seemed to proceed normally. Kate was anesthetized, monitors checked, surgical team ready. The procedure began as planned. William, left to pace quietly in the waiting room, tried to focus on trivial details to distract himself. He counted ceiling tiles. He watched the world pass through the hospital's windows. He rehearsed what he would say when the surgery was over. A warm, reassuring smile, a joke to make her laugh. He did not anticipate the moment when those plans would be shattered. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. In the operating theater, what initially appeared to be a simple issue started revealing itself to be far more complicated. Surgeons discovered abnormalities. Tumors, irregular masses, indications that went beyond the minor concern that had prompted the surgery. Every scan, every palpation, every small incision revealed deeper issues. The tone in the room shifted subtly but unmistakably. What had been routine suddenly demanded extreme caution, precision, and careful decision-making. Back in the waiting room, William noticed the change before he even understood it fully. The head surgeon, normally brisk and composed, stepped out with a furrowed brow. The room's atmosphere, previously calm with hushed conversation and the occasional ringing phone, became charged with tension. A nurse quietly gestured for William to come forward, and in that moment, an unspoken dread gripped him. Inside the operating room, the gravity of the situation crystallized. Doctors realized that the issue was not minor, that Kate's health was at serious risk, and that what was meant to be a short procedure could have life-altering consequences. The words that hung in the air were measured, careful, yet loaded with implication. Even as the medical team worked meticulously, the reality became clear. The surgery was uncovering late-stage ovarian cancer. When William was finally allowed a private moment with a senior aide, he was barely able to process the information. "She's strong," the aide said, voice low, almost hesitant. "But it's serious." Those words barely penetrated the fog of fear surrounding him. Every scenario raced through his mind. The worst-case possibilities, the uncertain future, the potential for grief beyond imagination. He felt paralyzed. He had faced public challenges, political crises, and personal stress, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The contrast between expectation and reality struck with unbearable intensity. A procedure that had been meant to correct a minor inconvenience had revealed a terminal diagnosis. In the sterile, bright-lit environment of the hospital, the couple's private world had shifted irreversibly. William's mind oscillated between hope and despair, trying desperately to reconcile the facts with the vision of a normal life he had pictured. Kate, meanwhile, remained under anesthesia, unaware of the immediate implications. But even unconscious, the stakes were monumental. The medical team had to make quick, precise decisions while ensuring she would be stabilized and prepared for further treatment. The surgeons discussed options in hushed tones, balancing urgency with caution, aware that every decision could have profound consequences. The weight of responsibility was immense. William's anxiety deepened as the hours crawled by. He walked the hospital corridors, trying to distract himself with routine tasks, meaningless observations, anything to occupy his mind. Yet every step echoed with dread. He recalled moments from their past, the first meeting, the engagement, the births of their children. Memories of laughter and happiness collided violently with the current crisis, making it nearly impossible to maintain composure. He reached for his phone, but hesitated. Any call could shatter the fragile calm he maintained in the hospital's waiting areas. Finally, the surgeons emerged, their expressions grim yet professional. William rushed forward, searching their eyes for reassurance, for any hint that the worst had been avoided. The news, when delivered, was devastating. Kate had late-stage ovarian cancer, discovered unexpectedly during what was supposed to be minor surgery. The words pierced the room like a blade. For a moment, William's world stopped. The ground beneath him seemed to dissolve. He could hear nothing but the pounding of his own heart. He spoke, barely audible. "I can't lose her. Not now, not like this." The aide placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him, reminding him that he was not alone. But alone he felt nonetheless. Alone in fear, alone in uncertainty, alone with the knowledge that the life he had envisioned for himself and his family had been irrevocably altered in the span of a single surgical procedure. As the immediate medical interventions continued, William's mind wandered. How would their children cope? How would the public react? How could he reconcile his duties as a royal with his need to be by Kate's side? The pressure was relentless, unyielding, and suffocating. Every step forward seemed laden with the weight of the world. And yet, amid the shock and fear, William found moments of clarity. He realized the importance of composure, of presence, of unwavering support. He resolved, silently, that he would not let despair dominate, that he would be the anchor Kate needed, even as the tides of crisis surged around them. Every decision, every whispered reassurance, every hand held in silence became a testament to his commitment. But in the background, the palace faced its own challenges. How to manage public disclosure, how to protect privacy, how to balance transparency with discretion, all these questions loomed as large as the medical crisis itself. Leaks, speculation, and media scrutiny were inevitable. And as the hours passed, the tension between private grief and public expectation grew, threatening to overwhelm even the most composed among them. And then came the first ripple from the outside world, an anonymous leak from hospital staff, a hint that something was seriously wrong. Within moments, social media began buzzing with speculation. Journalists whispered. The public's curiosity, already intense, ignited into a firestorm. William, already stretched thin, now faced the daunting task of protecting his family from a world eager for every detail. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. When the words finally reached William's ears, the world seemed to pause. Late-stage ovarian cancer. The phrase echoed in the corridors of the hospital, ricocheted in his mind, and struck at the very core of his being. Everything he had assumed about Kate's health, about the routine procedure, about life itself, was gone in an instant. The phrase was clinical, precise, and yet horrifyingly human in its implications. In that moment, William was no longer a prince, no longer a public figure, no longer a symbol of stoicism and composure. He was simply a husband, a man confronted with the terrifying possibility of losing the person he loved most. The hospital room, though empty of family and visitors, felt suffocating. Each beep of a monitor, each shuffle of a nurse, each whispered instruction from a doctor seemed amplified against the thundering of William's heartbeat. He could not focus, could not process, could not breathe properly. For a moment, all he could do was repeat the words in his mind, hoping that repetition would make them less real. It didn't. It made them more real. The gravity of the diagnosis was not just personal, it was national. Kate Middleton is not just a beloved figure in the United Kingdom. She is a global icon. Her poise, her charity work, her unwavering grace in the face of scrutiny have made her a role model for millions. The news of her illness immediately set off shockwaves across media outlets, social networks, and royal watchers worldwide. But for William, the world beyond the hospital walls was irrelevant. He was consumed by the immediate, unbearable truth. His wife, mother of his children, and the woman at the center of his universe, was facing a fight she had never anticipated. In those first hours, William's reactions were a mixture of disbelief, anger, and overwhelming fear. Close aides reported that he paced the corridors of the hospital, muttering to himself, attempting to reconcile the stark contrast between the life he had known and the reality now confronting him. He replayed moments from their past, memories of first meetings, engagement celebrations, and family milestones, each one now tinged with the bitter knowledge that the future was uncertain. He felt helpless, frustrated that the very systems of medicine and royalty he had trusted were unable to shield him from this horror. Kate's diagnosis also meant navigating the delicate balance between private grief and public scrutiny. The royal family is constantly under observation, every gesture, word, or expression dissected in the press and by the public. William, though overwhelmed with emotion, had to consider not only Kate's well-being but also the impact on their children, the staff, and the broader institution of the monarchy. Each decision carried a weight he had never fully anticipated. How much to reveal? How much to shield? How to ensure Kate received the care she needed without the world turning her private struggle into a spectacle? Reports suggest that in the hours following the diagnosis, William's actions were frantic yet measured. He conferred with medical professionals, absorbing complex information about treatment options, survival rates, and potential outcomes. Every conversation seemed to deepen the chasm of fear and urgency within him. And yet, despite the emotional tempest raging inside, he maintained a composed exterior when Kate awoke, offering gentle reassurance, soft touches, and whispered promises that he would be with her every step of the way. The immediate medical plan was daunting. Ovarian cancer, particularly at a late stage, requires aggressive treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, and often multiple rounds of intervention. Doctors outlined the risks, potential complications, and long-term prognosis. For the couple, the news was both a call to action and a source of immense anxiety. William, who had always prided himself on being a protector, felt the limitations of his power more acutely than ever. No title, no resources, no influence could alter the biological reality unfolding before him. As the diagnosis circulated within the inner circles of the palace, discussions on public disclosure began. How to break the news without causing unnecessary panic, how to maintain dignity while acknowledging the severity, and how to support the family while navigating an institution that thrives on control and image. All of these considerations weighed heavily on advisors. The palace operates with protocol, with careful timing and messaging, yet in this instance, the stakes were intensely personal. Any misstep could amplify the family's distress or provoke public outrage. The media, of course, would not wait for a palace statement. In the hours after internal confirmation of the diagnosis, leaks began to surface. Hospital documents, subtle hints from staff, and anonymous sources slowly pieced together the harrowing reality of Kate's condition. News outlets scrambled to verify the details. Social media buzzed with speculation, and public anxiety grew. The world began to realize that this was no ordinary health scare. It was a life-threatening diagnosis for one of the most visible women on the planet. William's public persona suddenly became secondary to his private torment. Accounts describe him walking alone in hospital corridors, hands gripping his face, murmuring words of desperation. "I can't lose her," he reportedly said repeatedly, voice cracking, tears streaming down his cheeks. He found brief solace only in moments by Kate's bedside, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, promising to navigate this terrifying journey together. It was a display of vulnerability that few had witnessed, a stark reminder that even those in the most elevated positions are not immune to fear and grief. The impact of this diagnosis extended far beyond the couple. Their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, would eventually need to be informed, and advisors debated how to approach the conversation. How do you explain to young children that their mother is critically ill? How do you prepare them emotionally without causing further trauma? William faced the unimaginable task of being both a grieving husband and a father needing to protect the innocence of his children, all while under the unrelenting gaze of public attention. For a moment, it seemed that time itself had fractured. Hours stretched endlessly, filled with calls, consultations, and emotional exhaustion. William sought solace in small rituals, revisiting old photographs, recalling shared jokes, and seeking quiet moments alone. But no distraction could fully shield him from the magnitude of the news. The diagnosis was not simply a medical statement. It was a profound existential challenge, a test of endurance, love, and resilience. And yet, amid the overwhelming fear, William displayed glimpses of remarkable determination. He engaged with medical teams, explored treatment options, and began to prepare for the long road ahead. He vowed to remain steadfast for Kate, for their children, and for the family legacy, even as he struggled with the human frailty inherent in facing such a devastating event. As the world slowly began to piece together the story, a stark dichotomy emerged: public fascination and private devastation. The media speculated, the public mourned in advance, and social networks buzzed with sympathy and concern. But behind closed doors, William grappled with the immediate, urgent reality. Kate's life was in danger, and the window for intervention was narrow. Every hour, every decision, carried consequences. And in the midst of this chaos, one question loomed larger than all others. How do you protect the ones you love most when the entire world is watching, when every moment is scrutinized, and when every decision could mean the difference between hope and despair? William's answer to that question would set the stage for the dramatic, heart-wrenching chapters that followed. But what came next would test the very limits of their resilience, and no one could have anticipated the challenges awaiting them outside the hospital walls. Not everything that happens to the royal family reaches the public eye. In fact, much of their lives, especially their most private and painful moments, are carefully hidden behind palace walls. And yet, in crises like this, even the most meticulously guarded institutions are tested. For William and Kate, the hours and days following the diagnosis were a study in quiet struggle, a battle fought away from cameras, headlines, and social media. The world saw a composed prince and a poised duchess. Inside, they were confronting fear, uncertainty, and heartbreak in ways that no royal protocol could prepare them for. The palace moved quickly. Advisors, senior aides, and medical liaisons convened to determine the best course of action. Every word, every gesture, every movement needed to be measured. But despite the strict protocols, behind closed doors, there was raw emotion. William's grief was palpable. Colleagues who had spent years observing his public composure described moments where he broke down entirely, pacing corridors, speaking in whispers, and clinging to anyone who could offer reassurance. He was no longer the symbol of stoic leadership the world was accustomed to. He was a husband desperate to protect the woman he loved from not just illness, but also the intrusion of public scrutiny. Kate's privacy became the palace's top priority, but protecting it was far from straightforward. Rumors, leaks, and speculation are constants in royal life. and no amount of security or protocol can fully prevent them. In the first 24 hours after the diagnosis, the palace focused on maintaining a controlled narrative, limited internal communication, strict confidentiality agreements, and immediate vetting of any external contacts. Even trusted staff had to be reminded repeatedly of the stakes. Any slip could turn private anguish into a global headline overnight. Meanwhile, William faced a relentless internal conflict. Every instinct told him to fight for his wife's health, to stay at her side, to shield her from fear and stress. Yet his royal duties loomed, demanding that he maintain appearances, attend to ceremonial obligations, and engage with advisors on matters far removed from the crisis at hand. Balancing the public and private spheres became a relentless mental strain. How could he remain composed in official matters while internally grappling with the terrifying uncertainty surrounding Kate's life? Inside the palace, quiet discussions grew tense. Some senior aides argued for a carefully timed public announcement, hoping to preempt speculation and control the narrative. Others suggested waiting, giving the family space to navigate the initial shock and medical consultations. William listened, absorbing conflicting advice while trying to process the personal reality he faced. Each recommendation, though strategic, carried a human cost. A delay could invite leaks. An early statement could intensify media scrutiny. Any misstep could exacerbate the emotional toll on his family. In these moments, William's vulnerability was fully on display. Aides recount whispered moments where he spoke of fear and helplessness, moments where he admitted he didn't know how to support Kate adequately or how to explain the severity of the situation to their children. He asked repeated, almost desperate questions. How do I protect her? How do I prepare our children? How do I maintain my role without failing my family? The palace staff, though trained for protocol, were unprepared for the intensity of raw emotion from the future king himself. The tension extended to Kate's immediate support network. Friends and family within the palace, often kept at a careful distance from public crises, were quietly consulted. Yet even they struggled with the emotional weight of the situation. Many could only offer practical advice: stay calm, focus on the medical facts, and be present. But the emotional reality of witnessing a loved one confront a potentially terminal illness could not be mitigated by strategy or ceremony. At the same time, the palace was quietly assessing the potential fallout beyond the family. Media outlets were quick to sense change, and social media chatter hinted that something significant was unfolding. Even a whisper of illness concerning Kate Middleton would trigger intense speculation. Advisors meticulously reviewed communication channels, monitored potential leaks, and prepared statements that balanced honesty with discretion. Every action was deliberate, yet the pressure of maintaining absolute control created its own strain. William, meanwhile, oscillated between stoic control and visceral emotion. Reports describe him quietly sitting beside Kate in private rooms, holding her hand, whispering reassurances, and sometimes breaking into tears himself. He was at once the protector and the one in need of protection. In these moments, palace walls offered some insulation from the outside world, but they could not shield him from the emotional storm within. Even small decisions became monumental. When to schedule additional consultations, how to frame conversations with doctors, how to approach their children, all of these required careful consideration. William weighed each choice with the knowledge that any misstep could affect not only Kate's health, but also the family's stability. A single misplaced word could induce panic or despair. A poorly timed public appearance could invite unwanted attention. The stakes were unlike anything the palace staff had navigated before. As the private struggle unfolded, the first hints of external awareness began to leak through. A brief mention in a staff memo, a subtle signal from hospital personnel, and whispers among trusted aides all suggested that secrecy would be difficult to maintain. The palace's meticulous efforts to manage information were already under threat, and the tension grew palpable. William understood that controlling the narrative outside was nearly as important as managing the crisis inside. In this atmosphere of uncertainty, William's emotional resilience was tested like never before. His days were consumed by consultations, private meetings, and moments of solitude spent trying to process the shock. Nights were often sleepless, filled with worry about Kate, the children, and the broader implications for the royal family. Every phone call, every text, every update from the medical team carried immense weight, shaping both immediate decisions and long-term strategies. Yet, despite the immense pressure, there were moments of quiet triumph. William found strength in small rituals, reading letters from supportive friends, revisiting cherished family photos, and simply sitting quietly with Kate, offering reassurance without words. These moments, though brief, became lifelines, reminders that even in the most controlled and scrutinized environments, human connection remains the most vital form of support. As the world outside buzzed with speculation, the silent struggle behind palace walls continued. William faced the impossible task of balancing public duty, private grief, and unrelenting anxiety about Kate's health. Every heartbeat carried fear, every decision bore consequence, and every whisper held the potential to alter the course of events. And then, despite their best efforts at discretion, the first cracks in secrecy appeared. A subtle leak, an unguarded comment, a hint that would spark questions beyond the palace walls. What was meant to remain private was beginning to seep into public consciousness. But what came next would test the boundaries of privacy, loyalty, and resilience, and no one could predict the storm that was about to erupt. The moment the news of Kate Middleton's diagnosis began to circulate beyond palace walls, the world erupted. For millions across the globe, this was more than a royal health scare. It was a collective heartbreak. Social media feeds flooded with disbelief and concern. News channels interrupted regular programming. Commentators debated the implications for the royal family. In every corner of the internet, the question echoed: how could someone so vibrant, so poised, so universally admired, face such a terrifying diagnosis? Within hours, the story had evolved from whispers and speculation to front-page headlines. Newspapers across Europe, North America, and Asia carried bold titles: Duchess of Cambridge battles cancer, royal family in crisis, Kate Middleton's life threatened. Twitter trends spiked, Instagram comments multiplied, and news anchors speculated on potential treatments, timelines, and outcomes. The sheer speed at which information, both verified and speculative, spread created a maelstrom that the palace had been striving to avoid. The media storm was relentless. Analysts dissected every past appearance of Kate for signs of illness. Paparazzi scoured every photograph, searching for visual hints, as if a tilted smile or subtle pallor could confirm what had already been reported. Experts weighed in with medical opinions, often contradicting one another, while commentators debated the implications for the monarchy and William's role as future king. The private struggle of a family became a public spectacle in real time. Yet the emotional impact extended far beyond headlines. Social media users shared personal stories of fear, illness, and resilience, creating a global tapestry of empathy that mirrored the shock gripping the royal family. Fans posted messages of support, offering prayers and encouragement, while others debated the ethics of public scrutiny. The Duchess, always admired for her composure and grace, now became a symbol of vulnerability, courage, and the universality of human fragility. Inside the palace, the reaction to the public outpouring was a mixture of relief and anxiety. On one hand, the world's support provided William and Kate with validation and solidarity. Messages, flowers, and virtual gestures poured in from across the globe, reminding them that even amidst the most intense scrutiny, human compassion could reach them. On the other hand, the sheer volume of attention intensified pressure. Every statement, every update, every movement became fodder for speculation. There was no longer a boundary between private grief and public fascination. The two had collided in a way that left the family navigating not just illness, but the relentless glare of worldwide attention. William, for his part, found the media storm overwhelming. He had always understood the weight of public attention, but experiencing it while confronting his wife's life-threatening illness was a different reality entirely. Accounts describe him pacing late at night, phone in hand, monitoring news feeds and social media for misinformation, attempting to protect his family from false reports and sensationalist narratives. The sense of helplessness was compounded by the knowledge that no royal decree could halt the curiosity, judgment, or scrutiny of the global audience. The palace also faced a difficult balancing act. acknowledging the severity of Kate's condition while protecting her dignity. Public statements were carefully crafted to convey concern without creating panic. Yet even the most measured words were dissected and debated in real time. Every press release, every official communiqué, every carefully curated image of Kate Middleton now carried emotional weight far beyond its intended purpose. The scrutiny became another form of stress for William, who had to ensure that both public perception and private realities were managed simultaneously. Beyond the media frenzy, global leaders expressed concern. Messages of support arrived from governments, heads of state, and public figures, emphasizing solidarity and empathy. The Duke of Cambridge was in constant contact with advisors, ensuring that these gestures were acknowledged while maintaining the focus on medical care and family privacy. Even diplomatic interactions carried an undercurrent of sensitivity. Every handshake, every public appearance, every conversation was weighed against the backdrop of Kate's diagnosis. In households around the world, citizens responded with a mixture of admiration, grief, and anxiety. Kate Middleton had long been a figure of relatability, despite her royal status. Her charity work, public appearances, and personal story had fostered an emotional connection with millions. Now, the public's response mirrored the shock that William felt personally, a global empathy that reinforced the shared humanity of illness, fear, and hope. Amid this storm, William's emotional resilience was continually tested. Every headline, every social media post, every public commentary served as a reminder that Kate's condition was not just private sorrow, it was a spectacle. He grappled with the challenge of remaining a supportive husband and attentive father, while also navigating the expectations and scrutiny of a public that often treated personal tragedy as entertainment. The weight of this dual reality, private anguish magnified by public interest, was immense. Yet, even in the midst of overwhelming media attention, moments of human connection persisted. Friends, colleagues, and advisors within the palace offered quiet support, helping William process not just the medical realities, but the emotional toll of public scrutiny. Messages from supportive figures, discreet visits, and small gestures of reassurance became critical lifelines. These acts, though private, reminded William that even in the glare of the global spotlight, he was not alone. The media storm also created unexpected pressures on the royal family's broader operations. Advisors had to manage inquiries from journalists, social media analysts, and even concerned citizens, all while maintaining strict confidentiality regarding medical details. Every response, every pause, every nonverbal gesture was analyzed and interpreted, increasing tension inside the palace. The family's daily routines, usually protected by tradition and security, were disrupted by the relentless curiosity of the public. In the midst of this chaos, William's focus remained on Kate. Reports describe him whispering words of comfort, holding her hand, and remaining close during medical procedures. His emotional transparency became a focal point for observers, highlighting the contrast between his usual composed public image and the raw vulnerability of a husband facing an unprecedented crisis. It was a rare glimpse into the human side of royalty, one that resonated deeply with the global audience. And yet, despite the public outpouring of support, the strain on William and the palace intensified. How to shield Kate from constant attention. How to protect their children from media intrusion. How to ensure that every public statement reflected both honesty and discretion. Each challenge compounded the emotional weight already present, turning even minor decisions into monumental considerations. As hours turned into days, the global reaction only intensified. The world watched, speculated, and mourned alongside the family. Yet, behind closed doors, William and the palace staff were navigating the delicate, emotionally charged terrain of private suffering amplified by public scrutiny. Every choice carried consequences. Every misstep could magnify fear and uncertainty. And then, amid this unprecedented media frenzy, a new threat emerged. A leak, subtle but dangerous, that hinted at the severity of Kate's condition before the palace could respond. The timing was catastrophic. The carefully maintained balance between private grief and public concern was slipping. William now faced not just the personal terror of his wife's diagnosis, but the immediate challenge of managing the consequences of exposure in a world that was ready to react at the speed of light. But what came next would push the family into uncharted territory, forcing decisions that would affect not just their privacy, but the very narrative of their lives. And the world was about to watch every moment. Royalty often comes with an expectation of composure, of calm under pressure, of a steadfast presence regardless of circumstance. William has spent decades living up to that standard, meticulously balancing public appearances, ceremonial obligations, and the intense scrutiny that accompanies life as the heir to the throne. Yet nothing, not protocol, not experience, not tradition, could prepare him for this. For the first time, he was confronted with an enemy that no title, no influence, no legacy could defeat: the raw, unfiltered fear of losing the person he loved most. The diagnosis struck like lightning. Late-stage ovarian cancer, discovered during what should have been minor surgery, turned William's carefully ordered world into chaos. In those first hours, he struggled to reconcile his responsibilities as a public figure with his private terror as a husband and father. Every instinct screamed to shield Kate, to take control, to protect her from the uncertainty and pain that loomed. But the reality was stark. This was a battle they would face together, and no amount of preparation could remove the fear, the heartbreak, or the relentless tension that followed them into every room, every meeting, every private conversation. Reports from palace insiders describe William pacing hospital corridors for hours, his mind racing through every possible outcome. He alternated between moments of stoic determination and raw vulnerability, sometimes speaking aloud to himself in attempts to make sense of the overwhelming news. "We'll get through this," he whispered in one instance. Yet just moments later, his voice broke with the stark reality. "I can't lose her. I just can't." That tension, the oscillation between hope and despair, became a constant undercurrent in his personal battle, shaping his decisions, his demeanor, and his emotional state. Even in private, William could not escape the shadow of public expectation. Every thought of his wife's condition was filtered through the lens of his role as a prince. How would the family maintain appearances? How would they reassure the public without compromising Kate's privacy? How could he ensure that the children remained protected while navigating their own fear and confusion? These questions added layers of complexity to an already unbearable emotional load. William was fighting on multiple fronts: as a husband, a father, a public figure, and a protector of an institution that demanded both transparency and secrecy. Friends close to the couple have shared glimpses of William's personal struggle. He reportedly spent late nights alone in quiet contemplation, trying to process the information that had so violently upended his life. Memories of shared moments, laughter, private jokes, family milestones, flashed unbidden, each one a reminder of what was at stake. The juxtaposition of these cherished recollections with the immediate fear for Kate's life created an emotional strain that was nearly impossible to bear. William found himself oscillating between determination to remain strong and the crushing weight of helplessness. The role of support networks became crucial. William leaned on senior aides, medical professionals, and close family members, seeking guidance, reassurance, and sometimes just a listening ear. Yet even within this support system, tension and anxiety were palpable. Advisors had to navigate their own fears while maintaining professionalism, ensuring that every piece of information shared with William was accurate and actionable. The palace, always a bastion of order and protocol, was being forced to contend with raw human emotion in its most vulnerable form. William's personal battle was not limited to emotional turmoil. Reports indicate that he became intensely involved in the logistical and medical aspects of Kate's care. He studied treatment options, spoke directly with oncologists, and engaged in every decision about scheduling procedures, managing medications, and coordinating care. For someone accustomed to ceremonial duties, this immersion in medical detail represented both a coping mechanism and a tangible way to assert control in a situation that felt otherwise uncontrollable. Despite his focus, William's moments of private despair were unavoidable. Staff recount instances where he broke down after brief interactions, sitting in solitude, hands gripping his face, whispering words of love, fear, and uncertainty. The physical manifestations of stress, sleepless nights, tension headaches, pacing, were constant reminders that even those in positions of power are not immune to the crushing weight of human vulnerability. The emotional intensity extended to his role as a father. George, Charlotte, and Louis, though shielded as much as possible, were acutely sensitive to the tension surrounding them. William struggled with how to communicate the reality of their mother's illness in age-appropriate terms while protecting their innocence and providing comfort. He faced an impossible balancing act, being honest without frightening them, present without allowing fear to dominate, strong without suppressing his own grief. Each interaction with his children became both a challenge and an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, love, and unwavering support. William also contended with the relentless intrusion of media scrutiny. Even in private, he was acutely aware of the eyes of the world. Every whisper, every movement, every interaction had the potential to be analyzed, speculated upon, and broadcast. This constant awareness intensified his personal struggle, making moments of private grief feel like public performance. He had to maintain composure, not for appearances alone, but to ensure that Kate, the children, and the extended family were shielded from unnecessary stress. In navigating these dual pressures, William found small anchors. Quiet conversations with trusted friends, moments of reflection, and the presence of Kate herself became lifelines. These moments reminded him that despite the weight of his responsibilities and the fear of the unknown, there was purpose, love, and hope intertwined with the struggle. Each handshake, each whispered word of reassurance, each tear shared became a testament to his commitment, resilience, and humanity. But even with these anchors, the battle was relentless. Every day brought new medical updates, new logistical challenges, and new emotional highs and lows. The diagnosis was not static. It evolved, demanding constant vigilance, emotional recalibration, and unyielding presence. William's personal battle was a continuous confrontation with fear, hope, and the unwavering desire to protect those he loved most. And then, amid this relentless personal struggle, a new challenge emerged, one that would push William to the limits of endurance and test not only his resolve as a husband and father, but also his capacity to navigate a world that demanded both transparency and discretion. But what came next would reveal just how high the stakes truly were, and no one could have predicted the choices William would be forced to make. Even as the world fixated on Prince William's visible anguish, there was another battle being waged behind closed doors, one fought quietly, with steely determination and unwavering courage. Kate Middleton, Duchess of Cambridge, faced her diagnosis with a strength that few could truly comprehend. While the public only glimpsed moments of her grace, her private fight was relentless, intimate, and profoundly human. She was not just a patient. She was a mother, a wife, and a symbol of resilience under unimaginable pressure. The first moments after learning the full scope of her condition were intensely private. Under anesthesia, Kate was unaware, but as she regained consciousness, she immediately sensed the tension around her. Medical staff were precise and professional, yet there was an undercurrent of gravity in their movements. William, by her side, offered quiet reassurance, whispering words meant to comfort, to anchor her in the present. But even in these small moments, the emotional weight of her reality pressed down. Despite this, Kate demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for composure. She understood, on some level, that panic would serve no purpose. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and terrifying, but succumbing to despair would not change her circumstances. Instead, she focused on the actionable, understanding her treatment options, engaging with her medical team, and maintaining a presence of calm for her family. Every decision, every question she asked, reflected not just intelligence, but a profound inner strength. The Duchess's strength was perhaps most evident in her interactions with her children. George, Charlotte, and Louis, though young, are acutely sensitive to their parents' moods. Kate, aware of their perception, worked tirelessly to maintain a sense of stability for them. In whispered moments away from cameras, she offered comfort, warmth, and reassurance, shielding them from the full weight of her condition. Each hug, each smile, each playful exchange was carefully measured to provide normalcy in a world that had suddenly shifted into chaos. Kate also drew strength from her private support network. Close friends, family, and trusted aides became her confidants, helping her process the emotional toll while maintaining discretion. These interactions were not simply social. They were vital lifelines. In these private circles, she allowed herself moments of vulnerability, admitting fear and pain, yet always circling back to resolve and determination. These quiet exchanges became a foundation for her resilience, a reminder that strength is not the absence of fear, but the ability to continue despite it. Even during medical consultations, Kate's presence was commanding. She asked detailed questions about surgery, chemotherapy, and long-term prognosis. She reviewed notes, cross-referenced medical advice, and made informed decisions in collaboration with her doctors. While her diagnosis was devastating, she refused to allow it to define her entirely. Her approach was methodical, thoughtful, and deliberate, a balance of realism and hope that both surprised and inspired those around her. Kate's courage extended beyond her immediate family. Though she remained largely shielded from public appearances during this period, she was acutely aware of her role as a public figure. She understood that the world watched her not just as a duchess, but as an emblem of strength and resilience. Even in her private struggle, she considered the broader impact of her illness, how it would inspire, comfort, or motivate those grappling with their own challenges. This awareness of responsibility, even in the most vulnerable of moments, demonstrated a depth of character that few fully appreciated. The treatment process itself tested her fortitude. Late-stage ovarian cancer requires aggressive interventions, surgery, chemotherapy, and ongoing monitoring. Kate faced these procedures with a quiet determination, enduring pain, uncertainty, and exhaustion without complaint. She sought to remain composed not for the medical team, not for advisors, but for William, for her children, and ultimately, for herself. In her resilience, she became a stabilizing force in a world suddenly dominated by fear and unpredictability. Even the smallest acts demonstrated her inner strength. Kate insisted on participating in discussions about her care, engaging directly with specialists, and making decisions about timing, treatment modalities, and side effect management. These acts were not merely practical. They were profoundly symbolic, reflecting her refusal to become a passive participant in her own life. She fought with intellect, with courage, and with a fierce determination to retain agency in the face of a disease intent on stripping it away. Kate's ability to maintain humor and humanity also played a critical role. Amid the fear and uncertainty, she found moments of levity, whether a quiet joke with William, a playful exchange with one of the children, or a wry observation during recovery. These moments, though brief, were essential in sustaining morale, humanizing the experience, and reinforcing her resilience. In laughter and levity, even fleeting, there was a reminder that life continues, even in crisis. The emotional intensity of her private struggle was mirrored by William's steadfast presence. Their interactions during this period were a mixture of vulnerability, support, and shared determination. They consoled one another, strategized together, and allowed themselves moments of raw honesty. Reports describe long conversations held late at night, where fears were voiced, tears shed, and renewed commitments made to confront the challenge ahead together. The partnership between William and Kate became a beacon of mutual strength, a testament to the power of shared resilience in the face of life-altering adversity. But even as Kate demonstrated extraordinary fortitude, the realities of her illness were unrelenting. There were moments of intense pain, of fear, and of uncertainty. Each test, each treatment session, each consultation carried the potential for new setbacks. And yet, she faced these challenges not with resignation, but with deliberate determination. She refused to let her diagnosis define her entire existence. Instead, she chose to fight, silently but fiercely, for herself, for her family, and for the future she envisioned. As the days turned into weeks, Kate's strength became increasingly apparent to those closest to her. Staff members, friends, and family alike remarked on her unwavering focus, her ability to maintain composure, and her insistence on participating in every aspect of her care. Even under extreme pressure, she exemplified resilience, courage, and grace, qualities that have long defined her public persona but were now illuminated in the most intimate, human of ways. And yet, despite her remarkable strength, the challenges continued to mount. Medical complications arose, emotional tensions intensified, and the shadow of public scrutiny loomed ever larger. Kate's journey was not linear. It was fraught with obstacles that tested both her physical endurance and her psychological resilience. But what came next would reveal just how unbreakable her courage truly was, and how her silent battle would inspire not only William and their children, but the world itself. Children have a remarkable ability to sense more than we often realize. Even the youngest among us pick up on tension, fear, and unspoken worries. For George, Charlotte, and Louis, the sudden storm surrounding their mother's health was both incomprehensible and deeply affecting. Behind the palace walls, away from the cameras and headlines, William and Kate faced the delicate, heart-wrenching task of shielding their children from the full impact of the diagnosis while helping them navigate a new, unsettling reality. The first challenge was understanding what the children already knew. Young minds are keen observers. They notice absent parents, hushed whispers, somber expressions. George, at 9 years old, was perceptive and asked more questions than William or Kate had anticipated. Charlotte, slightly younger but equally intuitive, mirrored her brother's concern. Louis, the youngest, seemed to sense the tension in the household even without fully understanding its origin. These interactions, though often unseen, were foundational in helping the children process fear and maintain a sense of connection with both parents. Kate's influence in these moments was equally profound. Even while recovering from surgery and enduring treatments, she made a concerted effort to remain emotionally present for her children. Her calm demeanor, combined with subtle expressions of warmth and humor, helped buffer the emotional turbulence of the household. By demonstrating resilience, she provided a model of strength and courage that the children could emulate, even as they navigated their own complex feelings. The palace's environment added another layer of complexity. The children, though shielded from public scrutiny, were acutely aware of the heightened security, the hushed conversations, and the presence of staff offering reassurance at every turn. William and Kate worked tirelessly to create pockets of normalcy, playtimes in familiar rooms, bedtime routines, and small celebrations of everyday milestones. These efforts were essential in maintaining a semblance of stability in a household otherwise dominated by anxiety and uncertainty. Emotional tension often manifested in subtle ways. George, for instance, sometimes expressed frustration or confusion, not out of defiance, but as a response to the stress he sensed. Charlotte occasionally retreated into quiet reflection, processing emotions in solitude. Louis sought extra physical reassurance, often clinging to either parent for comfort. Each behavior was a reminder that children, even in the most protected environments, internalize the emotional currents around them. William and Kate's challenge was to recognize these signals and respond with empathy, patience, and clarity. Throughout this period, moments of levity and connection were critical. The family found ways to engage in small joys, a shared joke, a playful game, or a quiet walk within palace grounds. These brief respites allowed the children to experience joy amidst uncertainty and reinforced the bonds of trust and security with their parents.